Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up or in the chat. Thanks, Dale. Hey, everyone. Good evening. Yes, it's 5 o'clock where I am. What time is it where you are? I'd love for folks to drop in the chat where they're zooming in from. Got Rochester, I'm sure New York folks coming in. Staten Island, great. Atlanta, oh, we got all East Coasters so far. No central time zone, folks. I'm in Arkansas. Don't ask me why. All right, well, we got a lot of East Coasters. That's great. If you're just coming in, I'm dropping the participant agenda into the chat. This is going to have links to a Google folder where all the resources for tonight are going to be. Oh, hey, New Mexico, welcome. This is being recorded. You can all feel free to keep your cameras off, keep your mics off. That's fine. We're recording this so that we can put it up on our tag website as a resource for folks who can't be here, and also so you all can access later on. I will ask that because we're talking about grant writing and it's not as experiential of a workshop as teaching artists are normally accustomed to, that you participate fully, whether it's coming on mic or just in the chat, so that it's not just me talking at you, because I hate that. I think we all hate that. And we're going to make this as fun as possible. Grant writing. My name is Katie Rainey. I am one of the co-executive directors of the Teaching Artists Guild. Almost said the Teaching Artist Project. Hey, Dale. So if you are a TAP participant, I do really need you to sign in. Please make their lives easier in the agenda so that you can get credit for being here. I used to be the director of the Teaching Artists Project, so I'm really happy to still be in this community. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Teaching Artists Guild at the end, because we have a lot of great tools that'll help you in your grant writing journey and just as a teaching artist in general. But we're going to jump right in. And thank you, everyone, for responding to the prompt in the chat. Let's see what we got here. So I asked, if you received a dream grant for your project, what would it pay for? And what's the scariest thing about grant writing? We've got, it would pay for space and materials, pay me. Absolutely. That's like the #1 thing we're looking for in these grants, is paying you, the artist. Possibly participants for their time and creativity. It would pay for snacks and water bottles, etc. The scariest thing about grant writing is selling myself as a creative practitioner and the imposter syndrome. Yes, you are going to have to talk yourselves up, and that is something I've had to get used to. Asking for money is not comfortable, talking about yourself is not comfortable, and those are all things that we have to do in grant writing. If I could receive my dream grant, it would pay for production team, camera operators, editor, theater space, paying people. Yes. Let's see. Help fund space related to arts and ecology. Am I saying that right? Oops. So seem very far away. So I'm excited to learn how to start moving closer to making them a reality. No problem. I'm also doing double duty as the tech and facilitators, and it's 5 o'clock here, as I said, and I have been working since 6 a.m. So if I mispronounce something, misstep, if my accent gets really unbearable, please just bear with me. I would pay for studio space and a workshop area for 12 students. Scariest is not knowing how to begin. We are definitely going to get into that, so you will feel comfortable with that by the end of this, at least jumping into it. Received a dream grant. It would be mount a play that speaks to the intersectionality of being young, disabled, and Muslim. Oh, I love that. Pay for rehearsals, pay the actors. Yes, paying people. The scariest thing is getting the materials together and having good images or videos to submit. Wow, that's a very specific thing. I like that. Space and materials, marketing materials. Yeah, these are all things. We're all thinking about different things, and I love that. The scariest thing is thinking I am not able to express my project and scope in the right way. Yes, great. Let me zoom down here, see if we got any more. Hey, Georgia. Hey, Chicago. Oh, great. Another central timer. Pay for next community artist residency at the location of my choice and would include 2 additional artist fees, photography and promo. Getting it all organized. Yes. Yeah, ditto. Pay stipends, publications, something you feel like you know really well, but never really written a grant. Okay, great. Oh, well, that is an excellent note to kick off on, Jennifer. Thank you for writing that. So I am, as I said, I'm Katie Rainey. I am a writer and a media artist. However, grant writing, I believe that anybody can do it, especially artists, everyone in this room, because we're all storytellers of some kind. And that's really all grant writing is. You guys tell stories through, your visual art, through media arts, through dance. It's all about just translating that to paper. And oftentimes not just through words, but visually as well. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to drop, just in case anybody came in late, and make sure we all have access to the agenda again. You can click through the Google folders in there. There's already resources in there. You'll have access to the slideshow because this has got a lot of information, a lot of words that we're going to some gloss over so that you can reference later, and I'm not just reading slides to you. And then there's other resources like grants list. We're gonna even talk about some specific projects that you all have and maybe do a little bit of grant research. And we'll talk about budgeting, that's a big one. And then we'll talk about tag and some tools that will help you in your work. Okay, so I'm gonna ask, I have a lot of slides. I am going to ask for folks to just jump in occasionally and just read what's on the screen so that we're not just listening to my voice the entire time, because I don't know if anybody wants that. So I will say that this grant writing workshop I started doing when I was the director of TAP. And so a lot of resources came from the organization Community Word Project in New York, as well as Brooklyn Arts Council and Artist Year. So I just want to give credit where credit's due. So we're gonna, we did our opening activity. This is our agenda, and we're gonna just dive deep into grant writing for teaching artists. We'll have a brief break. We're gonna do some breakout rooms, discussion with people, and then we'll do a reflection and closing. And so hopefully it will be a quick 90 minutes for you all. I know it's the end of the day. We're all probably tired. So hopefully it is interesting. So we're going to jump into grant writing for teaching artists right now because there's a lot to cover. We're going to start with finding grant opportunities, investigating grants, because that's a big one, is finding them. I think 50% of the grant writing battle is actually not the writing part, but it's finding the right grant for you. Grant writing 101, the anatomy of a proposal, logic models, examples, using data in your proposal, the SMART method, we'll get to that, and we'll talk about budgets, and then final tips, and I'll definitely take questions. Can I have somebody read that slide?
Before you begin, while a lot of grant writing is just following directions, there is an art to it. Grant writing is a left and right brain skill. You have to appeal to both the data people and the heart people in order to write the best proposal you can.
Thank you. Yes, I think as artists, we are definitely, most of us would say we fall under the heart people part, and we're not so worried about that. The data people part, I get, is a lot of a bigger concern to people, but it's actually a little bit easier than you think. Because there's a lot of data that exists about whatever project and whatever population you're dealing with out in the world already. So that doesn't all fall on you, but that's just something to keep in mind as we go forward, that grant writing is just a balance between the two. It's not all technical writing. You don't need a degree in rhetoric and writing to be able to write a grant. I certainly don't have, I have a degree in fiction. So you definitely don't need that to be a grant writer. So there are 2.5 ways to look for grant writing opportunities as an individual. So that's pretty much everybody here, unless is anybody part of an organization that's here, that's they would be writing a grant for an organization. Do you own an LLC, a 501c3? Just curious, drop in the chat or feel free to jump in. No. Okay, so we're, Well, yes, the TAP team. Okay, you're part of 2 boards for nonprofits. Great. Okay. So you might, I don't know, as a board member that you would be writing grants necessarily, but maybe you might be, if they're very small, you might be jumping in to do some of that work. And so then, yeah, you would be looking as an organization. So most grants are going to classify. Okay, great. Yeah, so you're working board. And that happens. So you're either going to be looking as an individual, which means you don't have like a 501c3 or anything. You're just an individual teaching artist applying for a grant to get funding to do your program, or as an organization. So you're applying as an entity. And that really comes down, that's important because of the funders. So funders are either funding individual or organizations. Now, as teaching artists, I hear this a lot. People are like, okay, as an individual, I come up against this barrier that most grants I see out there are for organizations, which isn't entirely true, but that can be a barrier. So the other halfway that you can apply as an individual is through a fiscal sponsorship. Has anybody heard of fiscal sponsorship before? Me? Got folks coming in. So if I pause every once in a while, yeah, we've heard of it. Well, if you haven't, fiscal sponsorship is essentially just you as an individual get to use an organization's nonprofit status to apply for grants. So like NYFA, the New York Foundation for the Arts, for those of you who are in New York, they do fiscal sponsorship for a lot of different organizations. They often give money. Theirs is a little interesting, the way they do that. But say we don't do this at TAG, but say, because we're not big enough to handle that kind of thing, but say we did, maybe we'd have a teaching artist come to us at TAG and use our nonprofit status to go apply for grants. That's the dream. One day it would be really cool. So those are the ways that we are starting out searching for grants. So we've got some places to look. I have a grants list. We'll get into that. I'll pull that up right here and drop it in the chat. If you're just coming in, let me drop in the agenda again. And if you are a part of TAP, please make sure you sign in. I'd love it if everybody could sign in, but make it easier on your co-directors to track your hours. But in the agenda, you'll see a grants list. And these are regional grants that we'll get to in just a second, but these are kind of the big places on here. And all this is linked. And again, you'll have the slideshow in your Google folder so that you'll be able to click through to all these places. But there's for individuals, there's foundation grant for individuals online. Your local arts councils are going to be the biggest places as teaching artists that you're looking for grants. Has anybody applied at a local arts council, maybe like Brooklyn Arts Council, for those of you who are there, or Staten Island Arts Council? No, maybe. Well, anyway, so these are, oh, did I mark this? I don't know how I'm doing that. Anyway, yes, yeah, we've applied. So there's a couple other places in here, the Field, Creative Capital. You might have heard these places before. Fractured Atlas, American for the Arts. They have a resource list. If you're an organization, GuideStar is a huge one that you might have heard of that people are going to apply to. And then we have a regional grants list that I have. I don't know what I did over here. I don't know if y'all can see that, but this is a regional grants list that I have been compiling. I've done this workshop several times, and I compile with people who are participants in the workshops by region. So if there is a grant in your region that you know of, if your city or your state is not listed and you know of a grant, please drop it in the chat or add. I think I can, let me make sure everybody has edit access to this. Okay. Now you should have edit access. You might have to refresh in that grants list, but please feel free to drop it into this grant, this document. It's a living document that we want to continue to share with folks, and just get bigger and bigger. And it makes it a little bit easier for this workshop. Does anybody, you got a City Arts Corp grant last year? Oh, congrats. That's awesome. Is that listed on here? Please put it on here if it's not. Anybody else? Any grants you know of in your area? I know we got New Mexico. I don't think we have any on here. I don't know if you know of any, or Georgia. A lot of the more rural areas, like for me here in Arkansas, it's going to be strictly through the Arts Council. That was in Staten Island and NYC. Okay. No, none. Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, it's pretty much like, unless there's a private funder or a private foundation that I might not know about in here in Arkansas, I'm essentially working with the Arts Council here to get grants. Georgia Council for the Arts. Yes, please. Thank you. Great. So we're going to come back and reference that grants list later on when we're doing some individual looking. Yes, what grants do you know about? Thank you for those of you adding those in. So can I get someone to read Dramatist Guild? Yes, they're a big one. Thank you for putting that in. Can I get someone to jump in and read the investigate card?
Hi. Investigate. When researching grants to apply for it, it's important to do your research and find ones that are right for your project. Ask yourself, does this foundation support organizations and projects that are like mine in mission, action, and spirit? Do I have any connection with board or staff members at this foundation? Is there other information that leads me to believe that this foundation will be a good fit?
Yeah, a big one for teaching artists. Thank you very much. I can't see there's a lot going on. I can't see who's reading, but thank you for jumping in. For teaching artists, a really big thing. I know if there's any writers in here or other, I know this very well for writers, is that we have our bios whenever we publish poems or stories, right? And then we see where other writers have published things. That's essentially what we're doing with grants as well. You want to check out other artists who are doing similar work to yours. If you know of any, see who's funding them. You can go for organizations, you can go to any organization and they'll list their funders on their website. So like, oh, by the way, in your participant agenda, there is another webinar that the Arts and Education Roundtable in New York did. I think we did it 2 years ago. With myself, I was assisting, but we also had a full-time grant writer come and do the webinar. So that's something you can access as well. Oh, yes, thanks. I'll add those to the grants list, but yeah, thanks for putting them in. So yeah, so you definitely want to look and see who are teaching artists doing similar work to yours. Check out their bios. Do they have websites? Who funds them? Maybe just ask them, because usually people are pretty open about that. As far as teaching artists goes. Can I get somebody else to read this one?
I can read it. Do
You.
you want me to read the whole thing?
Yes, please, go for it.
Okay. Examine. When researching grants to apply for, it's tempting to want to alter your project to cater to the requirements of a grant maker, but be cautious when doing so. Ask yourself if you actually have the capacity to deliver these outcomes in your project, and if you're knowledgeable about what the grant maker is asking for. Doing things for a grant maker that isn't actually in your project can leave you feeling scattered and overwhelmed. Do not change your project, but do adapt the language in your application to fit their language so that they know that your project is exactly what they're looking for. For instance, if they use the dignity of a community, use the word dignity and not respect in your application. Make it so easy for them to say, oh yeah, this project is doing exactly what we believe in. Take a magnifying glass and scour through the funding entity's website and any relevant articles. Pay attention to their priorities and how they want to make a difference. Pay attention to the language they use.
Thank you so much. Yes, this is a really big one when looking at grants. One, you don't want to overcommit yourself to something you can't deliver. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. And then two, really this language thing, people don't think about a lot, but it really helps. People are reading so many proposals. If you go in and you see how they're talking about the people they support, the people they want to fund, and kind of mirror their language. You don't want to change your project to fit what they're doing. If your project doesn't fit, then they're not the right funder for you. But if you do think that your project's a good fit, you're going to want to mirror their language that they use on their websites. to talk about the population you serve, the work you're doing, et cetera, because that'll make it really easy for them to say, oh, this aligns with our mission. So we're going to get into grant writing 101, the anatomy of a grant. So we're going to go finding the right grant for you and your project, preparing the ask, what do you need? Telling your story, why this project, writing the budget, our hard numbers. We're going to avoid mission drift. Funding should help the effort become sustainable, focused, and productive. So those are 3 things that you're going to want to ask yourself when looking at a grant. Is this going to make my project sustainable, focused, and productive? Or is it going to add a whole lot of work that has nothing to do with your project onto you? Is it going to stall what you really dream of doing? So those are things to look out for in a grant. Adapt and tailor. So I'm just quickly go through this one. Basically, you wouldn't send out the same cover letter, right, to multiple jobs. I hope everyone wouldn't. Maybe I'll do my resume writing and cover letter workshop later on. Please don't send out a generic cover letter to 18 jobs that you're applying for. Same goes with a grant. You have to tailor. We're going to go through here and have the anatomy of a grant, but this is called a boilerplate grant. So that's your basic skeleton of a grant, and that's what we're going to talk about. But depending on the funder you're applying to, you're going to tailor it and you're going to custom it to fit, again, their needs, their language, or not their needs, your needs, but their language, what they're looking for, their particular application. You're going to highlight the strengths of your project in a way that matches the priorities of the foundations, incorporate, again, their language, make it easy for reviewers to say, yes, this is exactly what I believe in. Can somebody read this checklist?
I'll read goals and priorities. In I can't even read this word. Eligibility requirements.
Eligibility required. It's the end of the day. I get it. Me too.
Deadlines, amount of funding available, limitations on funding, cost sharing or matching, application procedures.
Thank you. So you found the grant that you want to apply for. This is your first checklist that you're going to go through and say, does it match my goals and priorities? Am I eligible for this? Do I meet the requirements? Can I make these deadlines? Is the amount of funding what I need? Is this just going to be a $500 grant that's not really going to sustain my project? Or is it a bigger one that's going to help? Can I use all this money? Which is, generally not a problem for us, but that kind of thing. Are there any limitations on funding? And this is a really big one because a lot of us said we want to fund ourselves, right? That's a really important thing, but you will find that there are grants that don't fund what we call general operating in organizations. So like salaries, that kind of thing. They want to fund specific things like tech stuff, computers, or maybe they want to fund like we had at TAG, the NEA just funded us last April. They wanted to fund specifically the conference that we made. I don't know if anybody here came to our conference, but they specifically wanted to fund that conference and not general operating for our organization. We're a little too small for them. One day. Cost sharing or matching. So this is also linked in here to some resources for you, but cost sharing or matching is essentially this grant is asking you, if you're going to apply for it, you need to make sure that you have another grant that matches the amount of funding they're going to give you. So if they're going to give you $5,000, you have to have another organization or another foundation or another grant also giving you $5,000 to match. So that's a really important thing to see. If somebody's asking you for cost sharing or matching, that might not be a right fit for you. And do you know all the application procedures? So a lot of grants are on portals. I know those of you who have applied probably have encountered this. What I do for every grant that I write, I go through and I copy the entire portal and I put it in a Google Doc. So not only do we have that archived in our institutional knowledge at TAG so that it can be passed on to the next co-ED or person that comes along, but also so I can edit easily and not accidentally lose things in a portal, because sometimes grant portals can be notoriously finicky. Can I get somebody to read my anatomy of a proposal? I know it's a big slide.
I'll read it. Anatomy of a proposal. This is a basic structure for grants, also called boilerplate proposal, a boilerplate proposal. Each grant you apply for may have a different structure depending on what they're looking for. 1, history and mission. Start with a story and or picture, as well as any accolades you've received, quotes and or testimonials. 2, statement of need. Why is your project necessary and who benefits? B, why hasn't this project been addressed in the past? 3, project activity, methodology and outcomes. A, why did you choose to address this problem in this manner? B, what's special about your approach? C, who is going to participate? 4, timeline of activities. A, use tables and charts to break up the narrative. B, what specific outcomes are you expecting? C, why are you, your organization, the best people to do this? 5, evaluation. A, clearly outline how you'll measure success in your project.
Thank you. So this is, I don't know if this feels scary to people or not, but this is essentially the skeleton of any grant. These are questions that you can directly take to help you write your story. So I definitely encourage you that as you're looking at grants, you find one that you want to apply for, come into this slideshow and use these questions as prompts. They're really helpful. I mean, I've written so many grants at this point, but they're really helpful for me to reference. Like, okay, why is my project necessary, right? Why, who is this benefiting? Who's the population? Why are we the best people to tackle this problem? What, again, we have to talk about ourselves. We have to talk up ourselves. It's a lot easier if you're an organization because you can talk about the history of the organization and the work you've done. But as individual teaching artists, it can be difficult for us to beef ourselves up. But you are the expert here. You have to walk into grant writing that you are the expert in the room and you're going to tell them why you are. So that's really important. It's important to have bios ready. I don't know, does anybody not have a bio on hand that they can pull from? I can explain that a little bit more too if folks want. You find in Washington, a lot of grants are cost matching, which is hard for smaller nonprofits. Yes. Yes, it is. Okay, everybody knows what a bio is. Great. Make sure you have one on hand and that you're constantly updating with like any awards you've received, any performances or publications or things that you've done. Those are all really important to show that you are the expert in the room. So the most important thing to remember is that you'll need a compelling narrative as well as the data to back it up. Again, that heart people and data people. You're going to use data to tell your story, use facts to tell compelling stories, demonstrate your knowledge of the issue your project addresses, assist in measuring impact, and validate eligibility for funding. This is really important that you know the why your issue is important, that you know the history behind it. Say for TAG, you know, like we tend to, right now, we're focusing a lot on internal stuff, on co-leadership, and building a pipeline for teaching artists to be able to become leaders in the field. So how do we give that training? How do I train other folks to be able to write grants and do this work and be a co-executive director of the Teaching Artists Guild? So we're often fundraising for basically shared power, shared leadership is essentially what we call it. And so we have to talk about like the history of, you know, teaching artists historically not being not being leaders in the field, that we get told what to do by administrators, right? Who aren't in classrooms, who don't know what they're talking about. So why are teaching artists the people who need to be leading these organizations? Because we're boots on the ground, right? And we're the experts in the room. So that's just one example. Has anybody ever heard of a logic model? Or had experience writing one? Yes, yeah, we have some. So not every grant, this can be a little bit tricky. Not every grant is going to look for a logic model or what's called a theory of change, but some will. So I include this in here just in case you get a grant that asks you to show a logic model or a theory of change. And essentially what these are just a map of showing your, basically your activities, your outputs, outcomes, and the impact your program is doing. So conditions of the project, theory of change, the activities, what's the outcome, how are you measuring it? And I'll show you exactly what. There's a good link here, by the way, on how to create one. But this is kind of what a logic model looks like. So we have our inputs, so the things that we are putting into the project, right? The money, the people, the time, the activities we're doing, you're listing those out. And then what do those activities cause? So it's all cause and effect stuff going on. What changes? What are the short-term outcomes? So what immediate changes are we going to see as a result of your project? What are the medium-term outcomes? What are, behavioral, cultural changes? And then finally, long-term impacts years down the line. What did this residency do for these children 5 years from now? Something like that. And that might not be things that you have on hand, especially starting out your first project. Most teaching artist grants are not going to ask you for a logic model. I only include this in case folks are applying for organizations and need it. But there's some materials again in here. I highly recommend to go to the Corporation for National Community Service link in the slideshow to see how to make a logic model in a little more depth. And there's different versions of logic models. Has anybody seen a different one? Maybe you can Google them and see like a whole bunch of different logic models. Jennifer, did you make one? Have you made one?
I haven't made one. I hope you can hear me, Katie. I should have
Yeah.
asked.
Yeah.
Okay. I used to, I'm a librarian, and when I worked in the public library here in Macon, Georgia, I trained for the Foundation Center. So my library partnered with Foundation Center, and I was like certified as a trainer so I could teach my community how to grant write. So I did a lot of, there was a lot of train the trainer from Foundation Center, and that's where I encountered the logic model. I think I did probably a webinar where it was mentioned as professional development.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, if you continue to teach, train people how to write grants, I hope this is useful in that too. I'm happy to chat afterwards as well.
Yeah. Yes, that was my other life. So now I'm trying to figure out how I come back around. Maybe grant writing seems to pop up all the time for me now, but just the prospect of it. So I'm just gonna take this as a sign. See where it goes.
Yeah, well, please. I mean, and everyone in here, these resources are open, available to use. There's no like intellectual property that you have to ask. We create this to share with teaching artists so that you can directly take all this stuff and use it. So going back to the heart people, the data people, this is just another way to look at it as your left brain, right brain. You're talking about, I feel like we all could easily talk about our projects, right brain. I don't know, is there anybody who feels like they could talk about their residency in a more like logic analysis kind of way? I don't know, I feel like as one of the co-EDs, maybe now that I've done this for so long, I might jump into specific numbers immediately, like teaching artists in LA or X, Y, and Z. But I think definitely we all automatically speak from like the impact a specific I have a puppy coming in here, so she's probably gonna jump in my lap. Apologies. I feel like we could all talk immediately about the emotions behind our project, right? Okay, we're gonna do 2 quick examples. Can I get somebody to read example A for me?
I'd be glad to read. Katie, this is Jennifer. Example A, there is a serious disparity between the amount of arts opportunities available to affluent communities and those available to low-income communities. Did you want me to keep going?
Do you want to read the second one, please?
Sure. Example B, the research on the state of U.S. arts education from the National Center for Education Statistics shows that economically disadvantaged students are far less likely to access quality arts instruction compared to their more affluent peers. According to the National Endowment for the Arts, this arts opportunity gap disproportionately affects low-income students, students of color, and English language learners, who are far more likely to attend poverty public schools. 80% of low-income students in our nation attend poverty schools, but only about 26% report receiving any arts education, compared to nearly 60% of their more affluent peers.
Thank you so much. I know that was a mouthful. And I'll go ahead and preface this by saying these stats are a few years old. So this is just purely for the example and not to be taken verbatim. But which would you all fund? Just given this at face value, which one would you fund? You have $5,000 and you have to give it to one of these examples. Right? B. And why is that?
Because it's more thought out.
Right? Easy. Data driven for sure. Yeah. Specifics. Yeah. And this is not stuff that this teaching artist had to pull out of, the ether. They went to the National Endowment for the Arts and pulled from a study this direct research. And we have to do that all the time, right? We have to go look at for TAG when we're trying to fund regional network stuff. We have to go look at, like, I have to do a lot of research. When I moved back to Arkansas, I do a lot of research about teaching artists in the area. And I found huge gaps in the area. And so that's where I'm going to go after for funding to help support teaching artists in those areas. So that's where I'm going to go use those percentages, like, like there's no dance teaching artists hardly here. So things like that. So I'll go in and be like, the majority of schools, if they have arts programs, it's visual art and or theater. Stuff like that, and use percentages. So it's not stuff that you have to make up. It's stuff that already exists, I promise. So again, you're going to use data to tell your story, right? Seems well researched. Use facts to tell compelling stories, demonstrate knowledge of the issue, assist in measuring impact, and validate eligibility for funding. So that's all it is. You are telling a story about your mission, why it's important, and then you're using the data to help support that. So if I'm telling a story about teaching artists, compelling why I might jump into the importance of teaching artistry through social emotional learning and how that impacts students, maybe in the pandemic, I might use that. And I might say 60% of, these are numbers I'm just making up right now, but I might go somewhere and find if there's any facts about teaching artists in classrooms versus teaching artists in not classrooms in a certain area during the pandemic and the effects on those students or things like that, right? To tell my story, to show the importance of teaching artistry. So this is the SMART method. This is just something for you all to reference. A lot of these things are just things for you to reference, and these questions are to help prompt you with your writing. But you want to make sure your project is the SMART method: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time framed. And these are questions to help you figure that out. What do you want to achieve? Where will you focus your efforts? How do you plan to measure your progress? What are the end results going to happen? Do you have resources to achieve the goal already? So what are you already bringing to the table? That's a big one, right? Because, and you might think you might not have any, but like, think about maybe you already have a space, or maybe you already have the expertise in the room, right? That's, I mean, you all are experts, you're bringing yourselves. Do you have the resources? What factors might prevent achieving these goals? So you do want to talk about the challenges and barriers, be honest. Saying that we 100% can do everything is going to look a little bit false to a grant reviewer. So if there are challenges in doing your specific project, address them and say how you will address them if funded. Why is this important to your community? What benefit does it bring to the community you're serving? That's a big one, is thinking specifically about the community you're serving. If you're just saying like again, like we're not going to the NEA and saying Teaching Artist Guild, oh, we're funding every teaching artist in the country for this project. That's not possible, right? We're 3 staff members at a national organization. But I can go and say, we're piloting a project in Little Rock, Arkansas for teaching artists that we want to mirror in other cities. But we have to pilot it first, and we need funding to do that. And as long as we get XYZ, we feel we can replicate that in other areas. So think about your community specifically that you're targeting, and why you want to help them, and what benefit it is to them. And time frame, timelines are huge. You're gonna have to make a timeline in any grant that you apply for. They're gonna want to know, like, okay, what are the first couple of steps for achieving this goal? We've all written a curriculum. I think it should be clear in the grant that the serving organization is conservant with the community it served, and the grant was a collaborative effort with buy-in from the community. Absolutely, yes, Jennifer, thank you for dropping that in, right? You don't want to speak for a community that maybe you're not a part of or have no interaction with. If you're not a part of that community, why would you be targeting it? Are you partnering with people in the area? What's your tie-in? That's a great point. Thank you. What I was saying is we've all written a curriculum, right? And you've written a timeline for your curriculum. So like week 1, we're doing this, week 2, we're doing this. That's essentially what you're doing in a grant. It's just writing a timeline for a curriculum. This is a really big one, spell check. I can't tell you how many grants I've read where people didn't spell check. And it's not that, I know as writers, say maybe people in here, we don't want to police people's language and things like that. And so this can be a really difficult thing. But oftentimes spell check just kind of says to me, like, you reread your, or got somebody to read it, or you spell check on, Google Docs, that you put some thought into it, right? Getting something with a lot of misspelling, one misspelling or something like that is fine. But multiple, that's showing that you just kind of like threw stuff in and didn't really put any thought into this. And so are you going to put thought into the funding and the project that I give you? I will say that one of the big things that helped me become a good grant writer is volunteering to, or actually getting paid to, there's several paid opportunities to sit on review panels for grants. There's a lot available for teaching artists too. If you go to the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable, they often do re-granting programs and are looking for people to serve on their panels to read through grants. It helps make you a better grant writer too. So I just want to put that out there. Many of your arts councils will look for people to come sit on review panels. I get asked all the time now, and I tend to pass those off to teaching artists. If you're interested in doing that, let me know after. I'll give my email. And as things come on my plate, I'll send them out and share them. Okay, we're gonna jump into budgets. I know it's everybody's favorite thing. So I have a mock budget in here. And I'm also gonna pull up on the TAG website. We created, because people kept asking for a pay rate template. Let me see, where did I put that? Download spreadsheet, there we go. So this is also something that can help you too. This is a spreadsheet that we created at TAG for each individual artistry to help think about things that you need to bill for. So it can also help in creating your budget for your grant. But going through this, so did everybody see the mock budget that I put in? I'll put it up on my screen in just a second. So first though, usually in any grant, they're going to give you a template to use. Use their template, don't use your own. Just use theirs. Include both your expenses and your revenues. So are you bringing any money in aside from the funding? Categorize expenses in ways that make sense. So space rental, art supplies, you don't want to put odd things that I can't think of anything right now, but you want to just be really specific about where the money is going. Make sure your budget matches your narrative. So the thing that you want to fund, the project, like all of you said, I want to fund myself, I want to fund cameras, I want to fund space rental. You know, you're writing that in your proposal, make sure that matches in your budget. Use real numbers, be precise about the amounts you need. Make sure your numbers add up. Does everybody know how to use Excel and formulas? Anybody not know how to use a formula on Excel? I will show you really quickly. Okay.
I'm not really very well versed on that.
Perfect. I will show everyone. It's very easy once you get the hang of it. So it doesn't need to be a scary thing. And be realistic about what you're requesting from this funder. So they might say they fund projects from 30,000 to 50,000. That's a really big number. And I think the majority of people probably won't be going after that in here, but say TAG, the max we're a very small organization. The max we really go after right now is about 30,000. But say it's between 30 and 50,000. If you go ask for 50 or more, likely you're probably not going to get it. Be really realistic, like about and thoughtful about what you're spending all that money on. Let me change my screen really quick. Nope, I don't want to do that. Okay. All right, can we see this spreadsheet? Yep. So this is a mock budget that is in that Google folder for you all. Oh, my chat disappeared. There we go. And you can certainly download it and use it if you want. There's a grant budget. So this is likely the kind of the format they'll be looking for. It doesn't have to be super detailed specific, but look, we have like pretty big buckets: personnel, materials and supplies, marketing. And then I kind of broke it out. Sometimes they want it broken out a little bit more. So like I'm funding for facilitators for workshops. I'm funding for admin support. So who's doing all the behind the scenes stuff? Are there any guest artists, mentors? For materials and supplies, you might put space, food, supplies, transportation, marketing. So these are just, I put kind of random buckets in. And then I plugged in numbers. So I put this was for a $50,000 grant. So I knew that the total had to equal 50,000. So how you make a formula is we're going to make one over here real quick. We're just going to do 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. So say we have that for these four things. We are going to, I have to move things so that I can see. Okay. We are just going to highlight these four. And then there's the functions tool over here. Can everybody see that? You can see that. So you can do all kinds of stuff in functions, but the main thing we want to do right now is just add those up. So we're going to go functions, sum, and it's going to create a little formula. And then I'm just going to hit enter. And that's how we got 18,000. So if I change this now, it's going to change that. That makes sense to everyone? Yeah, do I need it? I can do it again if folks need. I will say that the function button has a lot more stuff on here. So if you need to average things, if you need to do stuff like that, but mostly for these budgets, you're just going to be using the sum. So basically what I did here is that this is set up to be the formula for these 4. See, it highlights those. And then I added this one plus all of these. So this is a sum of those. You can see it's kind of highlighted. Can we see that? And that's it. That's a formula in Excel. It's fairly simple. Do it once again. Okay. So all we do, we don't have any formulas here. We're going to plug in some numbers, 300. We're going to do 400. Do you want to try it, Meg? You want me to walk you through it? Because sometimes it's easier for me to do it while somebody's walking through it. If you want to, or I can do it. I updated access so people can jump in and try for themselves if they want, but so I'm just putting 300. Okay, no problem. 200, 6,000. I don't know. I'm just entering numbers. 77. Okay, so we have these 4. So I'm just going to highlight these 4, and then I'm going to go over here to this function button, and I'm going to hit sum, and it's going to make in the cell below this little formula, and all I do is hit enter. And that's my number.
Would you show the function button again up on the top?
Yeah, it's this one right here. Can you see where my,
Oh, yep. Yeah.
yeah, if you click down, it's just that little
Oh.
weird E looking one, and you hit sum.
Yep. Oh, great. And this is, you can do this on Google spreadsheet or Excel.
Yep, this is a Google spreadsheet, but yeah, you can do it in
Okay,
Excel
cool.
as well. Yeah.
Cool.
There's also an expanded version here of a budget that we used from, this is our mock TAP budget that I've used before. So just in case you needed to break stuff out by calendars, dates, but you really probably won't for a budget for a grant. It's going to look something fairly simple like this. So you can use this as a template, but if they give you a template budget to use, please use that. Let me get back into my, where is it? Okay, there it is. Okay. Can we see that again? Everybody can see my screen. Okay. Okay, let me get my stuff back up here. Changing views takes everything away sometimes. So that's essentially all you'll need from a budget for a grant. It's not super complicated. It's not like making your budget for your personal use. Again, there's also that planning tool that I dropped in the chat that we created at TAG for teaching artists to keep track of expenses and figure out also what they should be billing for, because sometimes it's hard to remember everything that you need to bill for, like planning time or maybe transportation, things like that. So there's that spreadsheet as well. And also we will put out, when we sent that out, if you see anything on that spreadsheet that you think, oh, you didn't think about this for visual artists, please email me and we'll include it as well. So that's our mock budget. So some final thoughts. The features of a strong proposal are well-organized, focused, clear proposals, well-researched and documented statement of need, innovative strategies for addressing the need. So why you, why now, why this project? Feasible goals. Can you do realistically what you say you're going to do? Measurable objectives. So how are you going to evaluate the program? And a sound evaluation plan. So it will ask you for an evaluation plan, and there's some materials in all of this, but it's essentially like, how do you measure success of your program? So is it going to be 30 students will participate and finish the program? They will create one collaborative media project. They will do a performance in Bryant Park, things like that. Will the students be from a certain community, something like that? Yeah. Some final tips. As said earlier, the best grant proposals appeal to both the heart and logic brains. That's just important I repeat that to keep in mind so that it makes it a little bit more structured for you, that you're thinking both these things go in. It's not just again, hard technical writing. And honestly, most grant reviewers are going to be people like us. So they want the heart story. They want to know like your story. I mean, certainly when I review grant proposals, I'm reading for the story. I'm like, why is this person really passionate about this project? You want to paint a vivid picture of your project. Before writing any proposal, make sure you have thought and developed all aspects of your project and that you have thoroughly researched grants that will fit your project. Again, finding the grant is half the battle, I promise. Many of the arts councils in New York, and this is everywhere, obviously I was doing this workshop in New York originally, but arts councils everywhere will offer workshops prior to their grants deadlines. So take advantage of those also, but they'll be a lot like this, but more specific to the Arts Council. So like for those of you in New York, I know Lower Manhattan Cultural Center offers a couple of workshops for their SUCASA grants and things like that are due. I know that's coming up. They're looking for SUCASA grants right now, by the way. Also, it is never a problem to email a grant program officer and ask questions if you have them. Oftentimes we invite grant program officers as an organization to our programs to come view it and say like, this is what we're doing. So like say at the Teaching Artist Project, I used to bring in funders all the time, be like, this is what we're doing and this is why it's important. And when they got to experience it, that was really great. That's not possible for everybody, but sometimes it is. And sometimes just a phone call to a grant officer to ask questions and to show that you're interested can really help. Many fellowships and residencies for artists follow similar guidelines to these. So you can use the information here when you're applying for a fellowship or artist residency too. There's a lot of this crossover language when you're writing these proposals. So please don't think this is like strictly grant writing. You can definitely use this elsewhere. Okay, so we're gonna take just a quick like 3-minute break for everybody to stretch and get a glass of water or whatever, because I know that I've been talking a lot. And then we will, we're gonna jump into breakout rooms for just a few minutes and then we'll take questions and close. Sound good? I'm gonna put 3 minutes on the clock. Okay. We're gonna come back. Actually, I was again thinking this was a 2-hour workshop, and that was why breakout rooms, and I forgot that we were 90 minutes. So I'm gonna skip that part, and since we're a smaller group, just kind of open it up too in here. Originally, I was going to send you into breakout rooms to talk about individual projects you might have and maybe look at some of those grants. But I think we can just open it up a little bit first for questions. And then also if people have specific projects and or grants in mind that they have questions about, or maybe want to be pointed in the right direction, happy to help with that too. And yes, thank you, Jennifer, for visit your public library. Many of them are grant training partners. It's great advice. Do we have any questions about the amount of things I threw at you so far? Let's do a shameless plug. Oh, are you plugging the library? Okay. Questions about anything, budgets, the anatomy of a proposal?
How did you get over being uncomfortable asking for money or talking about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Dale. That is a great one. And I'm actually training our newest co-ED in that exact skill. I'm not comfortable with it all. Nobody's comfortable asking for money or talking about themselves. But I realized that like many things in our world, funding the community that I serve is more important than my being uncomfortable, right? So I think it was just continuing to do it a whole lot. I kind of was forced to at Community Word Project and thrown into that role. And so I was actually talking with the current ED of CWP the other day. We had a Zoom and she was talking about how uncomfortable she is asking for money. And I was like, and you've been doing it 23 years. Is that not funny? But you want to get your projects done. You want to serve the people that you are trying to help with your project, or whatever you're trying to do, and have to just keep in mind that that's more important than you being uncomfortable for a few minutes talking about money. And a lot of people are not, as uncomfortable as you are asking for money, the person on the other end, especially like a grants officer, they're not uncomfortable you asking for it. That's what they do for a living, right? They fund projects. So you have to keep that in mind, that like you are not the first person to ask them for money, and you won't be the last. I find actually individual fundraising as an organization far more uncomfortable when I go and hit up my family and friends for like, hey, fund the Teaching Artists Guild. That can be a little bit more uncomfortable. What alternatives are there to working in grade schools? That's a great question. If you go to any arts councils, a lot of them are not gonna, well, not a lot of them, but some of them won't fund stuff in schools. They want to fund stuff in like community centers or project in libraries, or going to nursing homes, creative aging opportunities. Those are really becoming more and more popular, or working with incarcerated youth. So there's a lot of different areas that people fund. It's not just funding K through 12 public schools. Especially as teaching artists, you're going to see a lot more community driven projects that want to be funded. They're going to look for like, are you going into a community and meeting the population where they really gravitate towards? Maybe it's not really a grade school. Maybe a lot of time is spent at the local community center, at the library, that kind of thing. Consider too that funders are required by the IRS to give certain amount annually. Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're a foundation, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be spending that money. Otherwise, that's called like tax fraud and tax shelters or not tax shelters. That's called money laundering. That's what I'm looking for through foundations. Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. Foundations are for sure required to show that they're giving out that money. Does that answer those questions. And as far as talking about myself, that's where the bio comes in really helpful. I use my bio in grants, and that's pretty much it. I go through and I have that thing like ready-made with all my accolades, like any, you know, depending on what I'm applying for, like if I'm applying specifically for a shared power, shared leadership thing, like at TAG, then I show my expertise as a leader in the field and what I've been doing, which is training other teaching artists for a number of years to do this kind of work. And so I have that already in that kind of bio. If I'm a writer applying for funding for a residency, I show the accolades, like any awards I've won or publications where I've published, that kind of thing. So like anytime you get an award or you change jobs or, you know, you get a promotion, whatever, add that to your bio. And then that makes it easier because then you don't have to just like talk about yourself. You can just plug that in and move right along. I've been blessed with 2 residencies, one with the city of Chicago. I'd like to do more work like this. Oh, finding grants that fund this. Yeah, I know we have a Chicago section going pretty strong in that grants list. So I say definitely check that out. Again, so you've been blessed with 2 residencies with the city of Chicago. Did you get those through an arts council?
No, good question, actually. The city of Chicago came through like a call for artists, which I applied for, and it was a number of people who applied, and I just got chosen that year. So
Nice.
the current one is through a library. It's not in Chicago, but it is a suburb of Chicago, and that one just was building relationships with people, and they found out about me and they asked me to come to do projects at their library. But I love the environment, and I love the community that I'm serving. So I would love to do more work like that.
I definitely would say check out the grants list and what we've compiled already from Chicago and any local arts councils for sure. And especially if you've already done 2 residencies, that's great. You have examples for the next grant. So the first grant's always the hardest. Once you get funded once, then it's easier to show that work and say like, this was the success of this project. This is why we need to continue this work. So that's great that you already have that, and you probably have some kind of measurement of the success of those residencies in some form. So that's great for any grant that you go apply for. I know Chicago, I was in a focus group recently, or I was leading a focus group recently of teaching artists in Chicago. There was something different about the city, and it's not coming to me. I'll have to look. I'll have to look and maybe email you after something that I found out about the city. I really can't remember right now. Any other questions? Concerns? Well, I'm going to take the last few minutes to talk about the Teaching Artists Guild. In case, has anyone never heard of us before?
I haven't.
Great. Welcome. So we are awesome. Just join the site. Let me drop our website in. So this is our oh, no, that's not our website. That's a Google Doc. I'm going to switch screens. So Teaching Artists Guild, we are a practitioner-led organization that advocates for artists who teach is essentially our mission, which what that means is we are an organization for teaching artists by teaching artists. So it was started as just kind of like a group of teaching artists out in California in 2004. The Teaching Artists Guild it was Teaching Artists Organized. There was also the Association of Teaching Artists, which was primarily New York. In 2020, the two organizations merged into one because we were like, why should there be two separate kind of national teaching artist organizations? There's strength in numbers, right? So these two organizations merged and were operating under the Teaching Artists Guild name, but basically bringing all those people together. So we are, again, by teaching artists for teaching artists. So I'm an active working teaching artist. So are my co-executive directors. How the organization is run is right now we have 3 co-executive directors. In general, there's mostly just 2 on it. We're trying to fundraise for a permanent 3rd one on, and we're rotating. So I have been on for about a year. We just brought in a new co-executive director, and I will be on until fiscal year June 2024. She'll be on till June 2025. We're already looking ahead for the next co-AD, and they come off our National Advisory Committee, which is made up of teaching artists like all of you, just from around the country. You can go through and poke around. We believe in paying teaching artists for all the work they do. So obviously I'm paid for my role. People on the National Advisory Committee are paid to do certain work. This takes a lot of fundraising, but it's one of our primary values is fair pay for teaching artists. So you'll see some of your co-executive directors on here for the TAP team. And I have a lot of TAP alums for those of you who are in TAP on here. If you are interested in getting involved in TAG, I'm happy to chat more outside of this, and I'll put my email in the chat. But the big things that you need to know about TAG are, first, our asset map. One of our biggest things is we are trying to raise the visibility of teaching artists. Where did the chat go? There it is. I have too many monitors. So thank you for those of you who have already signed up. So the TAG asset map, we are trying to, again, raise the visibility of teaching artists everywhere. And that comes down to, for us, mapping where are teaching artists and organizations. So you'll see here, let's go to Arkansas. You see there's not a ton on here. It's a uphill battle getting folks on here. That's not me. There's me. Your address is hidden. It does not show exact locations, just FYI. But the idea is, here's my profile. You can go here and look. It's free to sign up for TAG. You can see whatever you're going to see more on my profile just because I'm an admin, but for the website. But you can put whatever you want on here, who you serve, your art forms. Not successful yet. Yeah, there's a couple of hiccups when I came on. It was led by not tech people before, so we're working. But I will go on the back end and find, if you want to drop your email, or here, if you can't sign up, I don't want to make y'all do that. teachingartists.com. If you try to sign up and you're having trouble, just email me and I'll make sure on the back end that you get in. It just takes me 2 seconds. So there's technical issues, but for the most part, it works well. But our idea is that we eventually want arts councils to use this as their roster, so that, like, if you go to the Arkansas Arts Council, the state of Arkansas would be blown up. Schools can go look and find teaching artists in their area, find teaching artists by art form. So you'll see, let's just show dancers. That shows just dancers that have signed up. Theater, music, literary arts. There we go. So I would pop up on here. You can do multidisciplinary. Yes. This is me. Oh, you just started yours last night. Great. Let's see. Nice, Meg. That's beautiful. Love it. So yes, so it's free to sign up. Please join. And then the other resources we have a pay rate calculator. If you have not used, this is primarily for you to go and figure out what is a living wage for you as a teaching artist in your city, and use this as a negotiating tool to advocate for fair pay. So where do I live and work? Ooh, that's not how you spell it. Little Rock, Arkansas, I have 0 dependents. I have a bunch of dogs. I would say that I'm probably in the professional to master category. I've been doing teaching artistry for over 15 years now. So I'm gonna say professional for now. Self-employed versus employee. So employee is gonna be like, did you fill out a W-2? Are you an employee of their or independent contractor? Are you basically filling out a 1099 and having to do your own, take out your own taxes and pay back that at tax time? So I'll just say employee. No, I'll say 1099 because I think the Arkansas Arts Council makes me do a 1099. So here, which looks like not a great wage, I think, for folks in New York, but we are in Arkansas. The cost of living is significantly lower. So $50 an hour for someone like me is it's fairly good. I make, I think, a little bit more than that with the Arkansas Arts Council. And then the annual rate is just, that's if you were a full-time teaching artist, that's gonna, like, with this one organization, this calculator directly pulls information from the Economic Policy Institute. So it's not a perfect tool, but it is a good negotiating tool, and it has caused a lot of organizations to up their rates. Used the tool recently to negotiate for higher wages. That's awesome. Awesome, Liza, so glad to hear that. We have, oh, you gonna work for me? Oh, it's doing a weird thing. There we go. See, so I'm signed in, so I can go view my profile and everything. So we also have resource databases, social justice databases. We have COVID-19 resources for teaching artists. We are in the process of overhauling that. We have a team of teaching artists who are getting paid to go through each of those resources and throw ones out that are irrelevant now, or add ones. So if you have resources like lesson plans, videos, anything, feel free to submit. It's free. All this is free to submit. They're also overhauling our training program. So if you go here to training programs, my internet's been a little slow today. You can find different training programs in your area. You can search by area. Let's see. None are listed in Arkansas, New York City. So you'll find different training programs. They're in the process of doing that. We have our map, our regional network. So if you want to find a group of teaching artists in your area, we also fund a lot of regional networks to do events and stuff. So you'll see Tag of California is a thing, Teaching Artists of the Mid-Atlantic, if you're in Georgia, and if somebody is the Mid-South, the Round Table, if you're in New York, we got Teaching Artists Rock for those in Rochester. Jobs and event board. So if you're looking for jobs, there you go. We have a job board. And then events, jobs are also free for teaching artists to post. So if you want to post something, you can email me or the info email directly, and you don't, because the jobs board does have a paywall. That's for organizations. We believe organizations should have to pay to post, but not teaching artists. Events also, if you have any events, those are free to post. So feel free to jump in. There's all kinds of, see, there's grant writing for teaching artists, but feel free to post your events. And then we have our Insight magazine. We used to have a Tag quarterly magazine that was put out, and now we essentially put out monthly articles. We pay teaching artists to write articles. If you're interested in writing for us, it's $200 an article. And we just had, let's see, this is Embracing a Heritage of Difference, Inclusion in the Classroom in October. We're about to put out our November one. We had some teaching artists talking about like their cultural bias in the classroom, which was really interesting. So if you're interested in writing, we would love to have you write. And so those are just some of the big resources. I encourage you all to poke around. Use Tag as a resource. You can also email us anytime, and we're happy to chit chat if you're having an issue, talk through things. But that is Tag, and that is my song and dance for this evening. So are there any questions that anyone has? Thanks, Dale. Thanks for having me. If you are interested in eventually joining the National Advisory Committee, you can feel free to email me and show your expression. We start taking applications for that. It's not really an application. You just fill out an interest form in May, June, and that's because we want people to be signed on for a certain amount of time so that there's consistency. So we will be opening those up in May, June after our TAG Awards. We do host the only national award ceremony for teaching artists, which we will take nominations for those soon. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. Great. I'm so glad that was helpful. I'll make sure those get the resources get emailed out to you all, but thank you so much for being here and for asking questions and taking part on this Tuesday evening. Now, please, everyone go have a cocktail or whatever you do. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Dale. I'm trying to figure out how to stop record here. We go.